Welcome to the channel. I'm Tony Mollengarden. I've been doing photography content creation now for about 3 years. And during that time when I first started out, I spent so much time on YouTube and Googling trying to find tips on how to be a good photographer. However, I never really found that one key video that was tailored to someone who was just starting out. And that's why I made this video. If you're thinking about buying a camera, getting into photography, or you just got a camera, don't know where to start, this video is for you. I'm going to share with you 5 beginner photography tips that I wish I knew when I was starting out. The first main tip I recommend to you guys is learning composition. Whether you're shooting on a phone or your camera, anyone can learn composition. There are many different rules, rule of thirds, leading lines, frame within frame. I recommend picking one and trying it out. For example, go out and try leading lines. What is leading lines though? Leading lines, anything that draws the attention to your subject. For example, if you're shooting someone on a sidewalk, center the sidewalk, use the sidewalk to draw the viewer to the subject. That brings us to our next main tip, which is make sure you're moving. As opposed to just standing in one spot and shooting, move around. Get low, lay down maybe if the ground's not dirty, move closer to the subject, further from your subject, crouch down, try to get to a higher vantage point. The more you move around, the more you'll make your shot interesting, the more angles you'll take the shot from. And then when you actually get back to review your photos, you'll see, wow, supposed to just shooting this straight in front of me, that lower shot looked great, or wow, I'm glad I went up to that higher angle over there and shot down at the subject to make a much more dramatic shot. The next main tip I have for you is learning exposure. So what is exposure? Exposure in its basic terms is how much light is being exposed to your camera's sensor. Now you might have heard overexposed and underexposed. Overexposed means your photo is too bright. There's too much light hitting your sensor. Underexposed means your photo is too dark. There's not enough light hitting your camera's sensor. So how do we figure out what an exposure is? Well, make sure you turn on your exposure meter. Most cameras already have this on by default. The exposure meter will show you when your photo is properly exposed. The goal is to have your exposure meter at 0. If it's negative, your photo's underexposed. If it's positive, your photo's overexposed. So the exposure metering will really come into play once you move out of that automatic mode. We start moving to the priority modes and eventually the manual mode. And this is when a key fundamental rule you need to learn comes into play, and that's called the exposure triangle. That's something you will need to learn to become a great photographer. The exposure triangle is a whole other video, so please let me know in the comments if you'd like to see that video in the future. The next big piece to learn is your white balance. White balance refers to the color of the light. For example, light at noon is a different color than the light at dusk. Or if you're inside, incandescent bulbs have a different color light than fluorescent bulbs. So how do we compensate for that? Now you can set your white balance to automatic, which then your camera will figure out what the lighting conditions are and set the white balance automatically. If you're more comfortable, you also can set the white balance yourself. For example, I know when I'm shooting right now, I have overhead incandescent lighting. So I set my white balance to the incandescent lighting setting. Now, if I were outside shooting on a bright sunny day, I'd set the white balance to the sunny day icon. And of course, as you get more experience, you can even set custom white balances that you set yourself within your camera settings. Now, the last tip that I wish I really focused on when I started photography was just shooting and reviewing my work. If anything you remember from this video, remember that the most important thing to do is to shoot and review. Of course, why is shooting important? Because you need to practice your photography. You need to practice taking shots with your actual camera. Like anything in life, you need to practice to get better. Now, why is the review piece that's very important? Reviewing your work is really important in order to understand what you're doing correctly and what you're doing wrong. Maybe you took a photo you didn't like. Well, why didn't you like it? Was the composition off? Was the lighting off? Conversely, if there's a photo you really liked, why did you like it? Was the composition great? Maybe the lighting at golden hours looked beautiful and you want to go back to that same spot to take more photos. So like I said, the only way to get better at photography is just to go out there and keep shooting, review your work, and go out and shoot again. Now that we've gone through all the 5 tips, I want to give you some homework. No, not boring homework. I want you to go out and take a photo. Go out and take 10 photos. You can do a self-portrait, you can go take a picture of your dog, you can go to maybe your favorite park and take some photos there, but go out and shoot. And if you're comfortable, post it on Instagram and share in the comments below your Instagram handle and which photo you took. I hope at least one of these tips is going to help you become a better photographer. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content like this in the future, please feel free to subscribe for my future videos. Get out there and keep shooting.